Did the Badgers nail it or whiff on opening weekend? 2 commits are in, but is that enough? And who's still on deck for next week? We're breaking down all of the buzz around official visits. I'm Rajeev. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Sunday afternoon to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the first big weekend of official visits is in the books, and we've already seen 2 commitments roll in. But was that enough to label it a success, or should fans be expecting more fireworks soon? On today's episode, we break down everything we know from the opening weekend, who is likely to hit, who's not, and what else we are hearing. We'll also preview some of the key visitors coming to Madison next weekend. Are the Badgers building real momentum, or do we have a reason to be cautious? You'll hear our honest take on whether we're impressed or disappointed so far and what needs to happen next to keep this class on track. We are available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button. We're closing in on 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, so appreciate that. And the like button, all that good fun stuff. Thank you as always. Justin, how you doing, man? How was your weekend?
Doing pretty good. It sounds like they had a very productive day in Madison today. I know we're seeing in the chat here some people saying only 2. And I'm like, there's a lot more news coming yet. I'm not going to give any specifics, but there's a lot more names you're going to see pop over the next few days.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of who hopefully we want to see. But yeah, what I say this, like there's a name that I'm still hearing about. There's also looking like things that have been posted by various writers, 2 to 3 still ready to come in the next couple of days. So that is good. But I tell you, I didn't even get a chance to really follow what was going on because I went to San Diego this weekend with my family. Took my daughter to Sesame Place. That was great. She loves Sesame Street. Wild Animal Safari Park. Good stuff. Got back yesterday, texted the guys, and I'm like, what did I miss? Because they're flying text messages flying all day. Justin's like, I'm getting anxious. I'm getting nervous. What's going on?
Absolutely. This is the most anxious I've been for a recruiting weekend because it feels like there's the most at stake with this cycle as opposed to the other. We had a lot of real momentum because of the Fickle hire the last couple of years. I feel like this is the first season we felt like they got to do work at these and lock down some guys. Not that the staff isn't very capable. I just feel like we're getting to the point where people are looking for tangible reasons to want to commit, and Wisconsin has to give it to them.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We have the 2 commits this weekend already that hit: Arthur Scott, Ben Wenzel. We are going to talk through both of those guys, put up their film for you. But what I would say, I'm going to just lead off with this. It's very clear. If these are the only 2 that committed this weekend, it's a big disappointment. Like that's obviously not good enough. However, everyone wants to hear Latimer, Washington, Petit, Sievers, Janda. They all want to hear those names. We don't know who's going to hit. We have some thoughts. We'll talk about who we want to see, but we'll see. If by Wednesday or Thursday we don't have those names and those guys are all going to OVs next weekend, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to see some of these guys hit potentially even tomorrow morning, potentially even later. I think probably done for the day. But what
I will say with these official visit weekends is a lot of times what happens is if you don't hear that they popped on the visit, normally what it means is you have kids that go home with their family and they want to have an honest discussion when the staff isn't sitting on their shoulder. And I get that. And I think the staff gets that too. They don't want to push these kids and try to get them in the boat, so to speak. I know it's a horrific term to be using, but you don't want to get them locked in when they're not ready. And when you get to go home and have a conversation with your parents about, what are your reasons for wanting to commit here? How you feel about everything? That's when you typically get, number 1, a better decision. And number 2, it's honestly a far better situation for the staff because then you're not Like the last thing you want to do is pressure a kid into it because that kid is so much more likely to flip.
Yeah, I mean, I said this last year during OVs. I have zero issue with people. Look, these kids they're 18 years old, 17 years old. They want a 16 in some cases. Like they're getting invited to all these fancy schools to get great recruiting trips. I have no issue with them going. What I care about is where this class ends up. And yes, listen, we talk about Badgers all the time. Of course, we want these things to pop right now, and we are going to talk about guys that we think will. But I mean, in the end, if it's 2 weeks, and we get so for example, if Petit and Washington both commit here and they commit here in 3 weeks, does it really matter? No, it doesn't. It matters that they actually hit. And so, but I understand that. I get it, right? Everyone's kind of like, you need to hit this time. It's kind of like, yeah, I get it.
So what I will say is there are some legitimate recruits that you look at in this cycle where you start to get a little uncomfortable if they're getting closer to those visits. And that's a guy like we talk about Petit. That's a guy that you're a little afraid to have him go to another school because you don't really know where Wisconsin is on his board. And that's where you always kind of are like, were we the top school coming in? Or were we fighting for second place? Or were we in a battle for first where they want to go take a look at some other place? I will say this. You learn a lot about how interested a kid is in the school by when they go in to have their conversation with the staff, and the staff may tell them, hey, this spot's yours, but if somebody chooses to commit next week, they're going to be able to commit. And that's where sometimes you take a look at a situation like this and you find out where you are on a kid's board, because they could tell you they're at the top, but if they're willing to sit on that and wait, that kind of tells you how they look at how they feel about the school in a way. Like, because if they're willing to let it go or take their chances, they probably are feeling a certain way about another school, or at least at the very minimum are looking at it and like, I'm good with either one. So it's not to say that they don't like the school, but there's always that chance where you're taking a look at that. Because I think we're all impulsive to a degree as human beings. And when you think that you're going to lose something that you really care about, you're pretty likely to just be like, well, screw it, I'm in. I'm good.
Wait, Justin, impulsive? What? What are we talking about here?
Emotional? Justin, emotional?
Eric, Doc, our good friend. Relax, Rajeev. The verbals from the weekend will release names all week during prime time to give the players their announcement feel. Totally agree. And like I said, it's very clear that if you read all the different boards that are out there, 2 to 3 names are still going to pop. They've pretty much already committed. We don't know who they are. We have some thoughts. We don't know who they are, and they will commit in the next couple days. P, I believe, with the guy in the black T-shirt, the one with the beard. Yeah, that's both of us today. That's both of us. All right. So, albeit the names that we have that haven't come out, we do have names that did come out, and we are going to talk about that today. Arthur Scott is the first one. So Arthur Scott is a 247 3-star defensive lineman, 6'3", 290 out of Streetsboro, Ohio. Other schools that were in the mix that he had official visits either scheduled for: Rutgers, Michigan State, Cincinnati. Had some offers from various MAC schools as well. Justin, solid, more of like a depth piece. I feel like we are gonna pull up his highlights right now. If I can just get everything working, I can maybe. There we go. We're gonna hit play on this. All right, Justin, give me your thoughts on Arthur Scott, our newest commit.
Yeah, sure. Based off of his junior film, and I will freely admit, year-to-year development with linemen can be significantly different. We saw this last year. Drayden Pavey, to me, he made an incredible leap from his junior year to his senior year. I liked his junior film. I felt that his senior film, he was a legit 4-star, in my opinion, looking at the film. He was super disruptive, made a ton of negative plays against basically his entire season. And we kind of saw that with a couple of guys. Cam Clark was another one from the offensive side where we talked about him. He was more of an athlete in his junior year. And then senior year, you saw his technique really take a big step forward. I think you look at that with Arthur Scott, and I see a guy who he's a good athlete. I don't know if he's what I would call a great athlete. And by saying that, what I mean is he's not super twitchy. I think he's got some good strength. I think he's a guy that I'd like to see play with a little more violence. And I think he's a guy who's really going to grow into his body. This is a guy that I look at that you give him a couple of years with Whitlow, and I think you're going to see him really take a step forward where he gets pushed to really show that physicality and the violence. I think you're looking at him as more of an interior guy. He's closer to like an Xavier Akponu to me than a Drayden Pavey, who I think Pavey is capable of being a really disruptive interior guy. I think that Scott's going to be kind of a little more of a jack of all trades. He's going to be a guy that's probably going to stand up a little bit, might be able to make a couple of pass rush moves here and there, but I don't think that that's going to be his strong suit on the interior.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Yes, I mean, obviously he's 290 right now, which means he's probably playing close to 310 when he's on a 6'3" frame when he gets into college. Agree with what you said there about it as athleticism. What I would say to add to that is he fights through blocks really well. So if you look at him in a 3 technique, kind of an interior type of a guy, he's a run stopper. And I feel like he's going to be able to do that because he fights with the blocks well. Mm-hmm. His tackling is a bit raw. He uses arms a lot in many cases, which I think will obviously get improved with technique. And we see a lot of that. What I would say, which again, people could, it's kind of a lazy thing to say, is EJ Whitlow has proven to be a pretty good recruiter. Mm-hmm. And if EJ Whitlow thinks he can develop this guy, I think I'm good with it. I like that. I feel like I just like that we're adding guys to this room, a room that for years has been just totally neglected by the previous staff, not this staff. And that's why we're kind of in the situation that we were in, trying to get people in the portal. But solid depth piece. You're always talking about filling out the D lineman room. And that's exactly what this guy is. You saw this the screen right now. If you're listening on YouTube, obviously we're playing the film. If you're not, no big deal. If you're podcast later, which we thank you for, we'll talk through it. Like I said, he fights through blocks well. I think it's a solid depth piece, Justin. I'm perfectly happy with this. And I think what I would say is the rating on 247, 86 seems about right for him.
Yeah. I think I'd put him in that 86, 87 range. He's a guy that, like, I've previously talked about guys that I think are that play up. I felt that way about Carmelo Reed. I think that he's a guy that plays up above the ranking that he currently has. I feel like this one's about right. I think that he's got an opportunity. He could take a massive step going into his senior year. He's a guy who I think if you see the strength pop, especially lower body for him, I think if you see him get more burst and strength through the legs where you see him really pop off the snap, that's when you're going to see him potentially take a jump. And I think that he's a guy who may really take a step forward in a college strength and conditioning program. I don't like to say that a guy doesn't have it in him because I think most of these guys, we have no clue until they get to the college game what they're going to truly be. But you're right. When we talk about filling out the defensive line room, to me, that's the biggest issue. When you don't have a lot of bodies in the room, it puts more pressure on everybody having to be a hit. And the more bodies you get in that room, the more opportunity you have that if you miss on a guy, you have other people in there that potentially are going to be a hit. And that's what I love with what Wisconsin is doing. I think we're looking at probably 3 bodies again this year. And if that's the case, I love having an opportunity that even if you only hit on 1 or 2 of those guys, it's still more opportunity there to actually find guys that can be really productive for you.
Completely agree. The other one that we added today was Ben Wenzel, composite 3-star, 6'3", 215-pound linebacker out of Appleton, so a local kid. Other offers and visits scheduled with Oklahoma, Kansas, Michigan State, Minnesota was another offer, and a lot of MAC schools. Again, I'm going to pull up his film here, and we'll let this run. So Justin, look, Ben Wenzel, what I saw watching this was really good vision and burst. Violent tackler. And one thing I noticed, which we're going to see on the film today, he changes direction very quickly. He can very quickly adapt to the play that he's seeing, make changes to recover quickly if he's not right in the right position. And that's something you're seeing on a lot of the film that you see. I think he's a bit undervalued, honestly. He's an 86 right now on 247. Obviously, we'll see how his senior film looks, but I like him to be a guy that can move up, not necessarily to a 4-star kid, but certainly someone that's got the potential. I mean, if you look at that violence and burst that he has, that's nice to see at this level.
Yeah, I think I've used this one comp before, and I kept it with Cooper Catalano last season a little bit. He reminds me of Jack Sanborn. Like, he's one of those guys, the physical tools don't pop like, say, a Mason Posa, where it's just like this guy's a freak show running around, but He moves really well. He's very instinctual. He's not a slouch as an athlete. He's a guy who really seems to know, like he's very efficient in his movements. Like he takes good angles, does a nice job. He's physical. He's very sound with his tackling. And this is a guy that I look at that you're seeing a guy who's a football player that's going to be productive. And he's one of those guys that I look at and I'm like, he's going to find a way to get on the field and make plays because he's a guy who's not going to make a lot of mistakes. And he's a guy who's going to maximize his talent.
Yeah, and I would say, you mentioned like the Jack Sanborn thing and the Mason Posa thing. I think some of his film kind of does look like a Mason Posa. I mean, I'm not saying he's Mason Posa level. He's not, but he really accelerates. And I just put up this comment from Mr. October, accelerates into the tackle well. That's nice. Like
when he makes a decision, he goes downhill quickly.
Right. Yeah, which again, hey, it's good. I'm gonna stop sharing this screen and I'm gonna bring up a comment here. That Bo Dragon, always a good listener to the show. Justin, how do you beat 5 stars with 3 stars? Just curious. Another person, too many 3-star guys, paid Fickle for getting 4-star guys. I have a take on this, but I want your take on this first.
Sure. First of all, what my response to that would be, I just want somebody who can evaluate well. I don't really care what their star ranking is. Listen, I'm going to say this flat out. Wisconsin has beaten 5 stars with 3 stars before. We've beaten LSU. We've beaten Ohio State. What you need is you need to develop the guys and you need to play them like they're that capable of players. Wisconsin has not had that type of development and talent on the field in a few years. Not all 3 stars are created equally. You got to look at the film. You got to take a look at a guy and decide whether does he actually have the athletic traits to compete with guys that are 5 stars. That's kind of the bigger way that I look at it. There's a lot of guys that we brought in these last several classes that I think with physical development are capable of playing on the field with anybody. I think the biggest position this year that they need to hit is I think that wide receiver room really needs to be hit. Mm-hmm. Like they've got to fill that up with guys who are top tier talent. And they can be guys that require a couple of years, but they have to at least have that in their skill set.
Yeah, what I would say is I agree. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it'd be great to get the 4 and 5 star guys constantly, and we have to have 4-star guys in every class, and we will. We'll have a good group of composite 4 stars in this class, like we did in the 25 class, like we did in the 24 class. So I'm not concerned about that. But ultimately, we've put guys in the NFL that were 3 stars. There are guys right now, plenty of people in the NFL that were 3 stars. So
I'm gonna tell you right now, Wisconsin's linebackers are literally running the NFL. Not one of those guys, I believe, is a 4-star. Zach Baum was a gray shirt 3-star walk-on. You had TJ Watt was a 3-star tight end. You had Sanborn was a 4-star when he came in. TJ Edwards was a 3-star. Like literally every single one of those guys was developed and turned into
Was Chanel a 4-star?
Chanel was a 3-star.
He was a 3-star. Okay.
There you go. He was a high 3-star, but he was a 3-star.
Yeah.
So basically every one of those guys that's a stud NFL player came in as a 3-star, and every single one of them proved athletically that they're capable of playing in the NFL at a high level. So evaluations really is what it comes down to. Yes, yeah. Zach Baum was a QB. I believe he quickly was switched over to a linebacker here. But, yeah, he played quarterback in high school mainly out of necessity.
Kevin Brown's salty today. He says, what team won a national championship with 3 stars? I mean, listen.
Let's walk before we run.
Right.
We get to 10 wins or we start to get playoff berths, then we can start talking about national championship.
And I agree.
And if you do that, you'll start to get the 4 stars.
We're not there. Like, obviously, let's make the playoff. Let's first get back to winning ways, right? Winning record. Let's get to a bowl game. Look at our 26 and 27 schedule. Again, with these classes, with the 24 and 25 classes, they're going to take us in 2026, potentially the playoffs, because I'm telling you, look at that schedule if you haven't looked at it yet. There's a lot out there. Okay, so we know that there's going to be 2 to 3 still hitting. The one name that I've heard that I even said before this past weekend was I do really think Zachary Washington's going to be one of these guys that hits. I've heard a lot of people want, obviously, the Petits, the Latimers. You heard Nick Osen on our show midweek say he felt really good about Latimer. So there's still 4 stars out there that I do think we're going to get. Again, we don't know who. We've heard a couple names. We're going to tell you everything we've heard, but we'll tell you that I think the guys that are going to come off the board soon are going to be people that everybody likes. Who do you most want to see hit over the next couple days?
Oh, without question, to me, it's Petit. There has never been a guy on the Wisconsin roster that has his level of talent. And I went back and I watched the film coming into this weekend again, or when we watched it on the last show. I was like, once again, I looked at it and I'm like, there's nobody that has come in as a wide receiver here that is remotely on that like raw talent level as to what he was. The 6'4" looks legit, or at least super close to it. And he moves so fluidly like a big wide receiver. And I'm like, Wisconsin just doesn't get guys with that kind of size. Like, we might get a 6'1" guy, but we're not getting a 6'4" guy that has that type of length and that ability to move. And that ability to move athletically, where, like I said, you could see him just creating natural space because he's that physically gifted.
As we said on our midweek show, by the way, and if you haven't watched that, if you want to go back and look at some film of the guys that are here this weekend in Madison this weekend, go look at our show with Nick Osen midweek. You said it actually, Justin, that he looks like an Ohio State kind of a guy. He looks like a guy that Ohio State's recruiting. And if you watch Petit's film, it's ridiculous. Like, it is ridiculous. It's an insane. Same with Latimer, by the way. I feel like Latimer is one of those running backs where you're like, wow. So for me, it's Latimer and Petit. I don't think we're going to get them both, but I sure would love to. I don't think we're going to. Washington, Petit, we might get both. I have heard good things about Washington. I don't know. I think that there's some to talk about the tight ends. Like, who knows what's really going to happen and who's going to hit. But I do expect, as our good friend Doc said earlier to start the show, the next few days, you're going to see them pop every now and again because you're going to want to get everyone wants their moment, right, in the sun. Yeah. So you're not going to get more today. We already have the two, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Zach Barr's putting up Zion Legree and Ole Miss commit. He just decommitted today. We are his only official visit scheduled right now. And I know he's somebody Wisconsin has really been working on. Legit speed. I watched his film. He looks like a guy who's jogging, who is running away from people and just never puts it into high gear. And I'm like, he's got a legit laser time 4.3. I'm like, it shows because I'm watching him run and he does not look like he's stressing himself at all when he's running at that level. And he's playing in, I think he's Mississippi. He's playing in Southern football where it's legit down there.
Well, so whatever happens this week, we'll obviously talk about that and figure, hopefully we get some good drops in the next couple of days. But we do have people coming in next week as well. OVs continue. I'm going to first go through the list of who we have coming in, and we're going to highlight 4 players today. Ryan Estrada, Germaine Pulk, Jamian Theodore, and Galani Miller. We're going to go through those guys' film. But here's who's coming in next weekend. We have Owen Cabell, the wide receiver, Marky Walbridge, offensive tackle, Jamian Theodore, who we're going to highlight, Galani Miller, we're going to highlight, Ryan Estrada will highlight, Nick Lauder, tight end out of Lebanon, Ohio, Dominic Berry, Germaine Pulk, who we're going to talk about, Deshaun Spencer, and then 3 guys we already have committed, Benjamin Novak, Maddox Cochran, and Aiden Reeder out of St. X in Cincinnati. But let's first start talking about Ryan Estrada, who is a 5'9", 185-pound running back out of El Paso, Texas, composite 4-star. He is in Mizzou. According to the 247, he is in Mizzou this weekend taking an official visit. He's also looking at Michigan, Minnesota, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State appears to be the school that we might be competing the most with for this. I'm going to pull up his highlights and let that run. Justin, Ryan Estrada has been a guy that you too. I'm sorry?
Oklahoma and Alabama recently offered him.
That's right. They did recently offer. You mentioned, like, if you watch this guy's film, you see a lot of 80-yard touchdowns on this guy's film. It's pretty ridiculous. You've talked about Ryan Estrada for quite some time. What do you like?
Yeah, I think he's got great quickness. He's a guy who's shifty. Like, somebody argued with me a little bit on him in comparison to Dupree. And I think the difference I see here is Estrada's a little more the jitterbug James White type. I think Dupree's a little bit bigger. And I kind of look at it from this standpoint. They're similar. It's just the way you watch him run, he kind of moves like James White in a way. I don't really equate them to being exact replicas. And I think this is something that would be different on our roster if you get a guy like him in. because I think Dupree can get bigger than this. This is a specialty back. He's a lightning guy. He's a guy that brings out that quickness that comes in there that's a little bit different than what everyone else is bringing. And you want that guy to come in there and make an off or a defense uncomfortable after they've dealt with a guy like some of the other guys. And yeah, it's constant. You watch this film, and it was ridiculous when I was watching it. I'm like, how many touchdowns are left on this? Because I'm like, we're like 8 or 9 in. I'm like, and he's still running them. I'm like, how is it possible that this guy broke off this many big runs? And he's like, at the time, he was not a super highly recruited kid that we were in on. And all of a sudden, it's like everybody is throwing offers at him. Like, how did this not happen?
I mean, so yeah, when you think about competition, first of all, he plays in Texas. I know it's El Paso, but
that's
Texas
the other part of it.
Texas football, right? Like you're getting a lot of talent there. Yeah, you said it right. He's like a a pro type of a comp is like a Darren Sproles type of a very shifty guy. Yep. He's only 5'9", but imagine Ryan Estrada in space in Jeff Grimes' offense. That to me is what you can get you excited, because you know that this kind of back, similar to what we're going to see out of Dupree this season, that's the kind of guy that Jeff Grimes can do a lot with. Whether it's a screen pass or whether it's over the middle type mesh routes, like you get this guy in space. End around, jet sweeps.
He's a speed back.
There is a lot of things you can do. And if you watch this guy's film, he is very, very shifty. He has got really good vision. He finds the hole. And again, he's playing in Texas. I don't know what the divisions are. I don't know where his high school sits, but when you play Texas football, you automatically are like, okay, you're playing at a pretty solid level right off the bat. Yeah. And I'm not going to take that away from him. But yeah, the guy scores touchdowns left and right because he just
how long have we been watching this now? He's still scoring touchdowns on
we're 2.5 minutes into this junior film, and he's scored a touchdown on almost every play that he's touched the ball, which again it's spectacular. He's very, very fast and a very shifty running back. So he's obviously visiting us next weekend, which would be great to have him in the mix. I think that obviously we've talked about Latimer. We want Latimer, but Justin, there's no reason why we can't have both of them, or we shouldn't really.
Yeah, I think they're a good matchup. Like you have Jones and Dupree, and now you have a year in between, and you'd love to pair these Latimer and him together. I think that they're a great change of pace. Latimer's kind of your battery ram. I think that he runs really well. He's more patient, and then you can hit him with a guy like Estrada, who's just that jitterbug back that kind of hits the hole, and he's a completely different back than Latimer is, and it's really kind of jarring when you see how he moves in comparison to the other.
Badger Bournemouth, he looks faster than Darian Dupree. I think he is.
He's probably a 4.4 guy.
Yeah, I think he definitely is. Mike Segelski. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. The staff will use Estrada better than Guerrero, right? Yes. God, I hope so. Guerrero was, and Ryan will tell you, he was about the most underutilized great running back we've ever had at this university, and it's not good. Not good at all. All right, so let's move on to the next one. We're going to talk about coming in again next weekend, Germaine Pulk. Let me find my stats on him. 6'4", 265-pound defensive lineman out of Toledo, Ohio. 247 has him at a 3-star. He's an 88. He's in Boston College this weekend. Iowa and Iowa State are also in for him. Iowa looks to be the person that the school that we're most going to be competing with. I'm going to start his film here. Again, EJ Whitlow, good recruiting here. We've seen pretty good things from him. What are your thoughts on Germaine Pulk? I really like this guy's film.
Yeah, I think he's a slightly bigger version of DJ Ba. Like you look at him, and I see a guy who I think he has a little more versatility than Ba, because I think he does have more size and length that can play some interior as well as the edge. He's a guy I think you have at 290, 300 by the time he's all said and done. And he's going to be able to play either spot depending upon what you need him to do. I think he moves really well. I think he's physical. I'm all on board with this for 2 reasons. Number one, I think he's worthy of the offer and getting him in the fold. And I absolutely want to take him away from Iowa, because this screams like a guy that's just going to be really productive and be a pain in the neck if Iowa gets him.
I hadn't really thought about looking at it like that, but you're so right. We don't need this guy going to Iowa. Yeah. I agree. He seems like a flex, versatile guy in the defensive lineman room, right?
Good burst, does a nice job of disengaging from blockers.
Right. Because
he's physical when he tackles. I
agree. Not really much of a pass rush threat, so to speak, but again, he fights through blocks pretty well. Probably more of like a 5 tech, a bit more on the outside. I think, he seems like the versatility is what we need. And again, it kind of goes back to what we talked about with Arthur Scott. Clearly, EJ Whitlow realizes and recognizes he's got to fill the room with size and athleticism. And I would say that I like the athleticism I'm seeing from Pulk. I mean, he appears to look a bit more athletic than Arthur Scott. Not to say Arthur Scott can't develop that, but I like the athleticism that we're seeing from him. He's very quick. Got a nice burst off the line, too, and can make quick decisions.
And some good violence. Like, I really like the way he hits. When he gets in the backfield and he gets a hold of somebody, he definitely throws them down. I like a guy who, when he tackles somebody, you could tell that it's made an impression on whoever he hits. And you get that sense with Polk. Like, he's a guy who's very physical with the way he attacks. He gets a hold of you, he's putting you in the ground. You saw it with Carmelo Reed. He was another one of those guys. Like, when he hit somebody, they were shaking a little bit after they got up from him.
Yeah, definitely someone that I think I really like. I like what I see out of him, and I think, again, I like what I see out of Whitlow. I'm happy with what he's doing right now. All right, now we're going to go to the defensive backfield a little bit before we go to our last one, who's on offense. Jamian Theodore, 6 foot, 171 cornerback out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. 247's got him at a 3-star, 87 rating. He's in Kentucky this week. He's from Tennessee, and he is going to be visiting Tennessee soon after us. I'm going to pull up his tape. Cornerback, someone that, by the way, a position we haven't really talked a lot about in the last couple of weeks with official visits, Justin, someone that we really need to get. We need this position, most likely.
Yeah, I think that's a board that we're all kind of interested to see, because I don't really know how it's set up. Theodore, I think, is a guy who has really good instincts. He's kind of a ball hawk on the back end. I would say he's more of a zone corner. You watch, he's definitely a guy who likes to play off and use his eyes and keep players in front of him. But he has really good instincts. He's a guy who moves really well. He reminds me of Cairo Skanes a little bit from the last cycle. And as we've seen, Skanes came in here and has been really good in his first camp of the spring. He's a guy who stood out. I think that's what you potentially have in a guy like this, if you get him in the fold, is another guy who's really got good instincts and can be a productive player on the back end. I think you still need that guy, and maybe that's going to be Eloms as your corner. That's going to be more the physical press guy that plays up. I think he might be a tad more athletic, even though I think Theodore might have a little bit more burst to him. But I think that it's a nice pairing if you can get both of them. I'd like this guy playing your field side, let him just kind of read and react, versus having a guy like Eloms on the boundary side and have him come up and attack.
Yeah, read and react, I think, is exactly right. He's not the fastest guy that's going to cover your number one boundary guy that's going to just be sort of the man on the island, but he absolutely can read and react. He keeps his eyes on the quarterback. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. I feel like he makes the right decisions when he's cutting back to the ball, when he's making adjustments. He's good at finding the ball in space. And you just need a guy like that, right? He's one of those guys that you can see, he's going to get a couple picks every year because he's just going to read a play right. He's going to make the right decision and find a way to get it done. Yeah, but the room desperately needs someone else, Justin, and I feel like he could be that guy. He's someone who we wanted to highlight coming in for next weekend. Lastly, for next weekend is Galani Miller. I'm going to pull up. Sorry, here. Let me just do this. All these like screens I'm trying to run at the same time, I'll tell you. All right. Galani Miller is an interior offensive lineman. So 6'5", 305 out of Goodyear, Arizona. Offers and visits Stanford, USC, Auburn, Arizona State. USC, I've seen him as kind of projected to be there, but we'll see. He is a composite 3-star. There's some tackle film. There's some interior film. Justin Blazek has done really well everywhere. Every guy he's looked at, we seem to like. What are your thoughts on Galani?
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think he's more of an interior guy. I think you see him on kind of his movement on the edge here. He's not a bad athlete by any means. He's super physical. He's a guy that he's kind of got a little bit of that Mandel where you can see him on the interior just absolutely bulldozing people and has nimble feet. I think he would do really well on the interior. I would love to see a guy like this come in and continue to fill that out. It will be really interesting, honestly, to see if Blazek can lock down a guy like Blair from this weekend. That board's probably closed. This visit might not even happen. But if it does, I really like what this guy brings to the table. I think he's another capable, athletic guy that you can bring in that will really elevate that room overall in terms of what you're seeing from this cycle. He's a little more polished, I think, than the guys that we've had the first couple. And I think that's what you're kind of hoping for, is a guy who's a little bit more ready-made. If you're going to get the last guy, you want it to kind of be the high point guy, because I think you have two guys that I really like, but I think are projects that are kind of in this class. I trust Blazek to get the most out of them, but I think that we'd agree both of those guys are probably going to take a couple of years of development to be ready to play.
Yep. I really like the Mandel side of comp to this. I think that's a really good point. Agree, interior, but really good frame for the interior. 6'5" on the interior. I mean, he's already 305, which is great. He probably he's at 315.
Got a little bit of that keg build when you look at him on film. He's very wide. Like, yeah. He's a broad guy, which I think that's a plus to me. Well, like when you see your tackles, you typically want them to be kind of a little bit lankier guys, almost look like a bigger tight end. You kind of want your guards to be guys who are a little more squat and a little bit more low center of gravity, and that ability to just kind of squat down and just blast people off the line.
Yeah, what I wrote down for him was refined technique. When you don't see a ton of offensive linemen, like you mentioned, have that kind of good technique, I think he really keeps that low center of gravity. He pushes up from his arms. He uses his hands well.
Pad level for it.
And exactly. And he's not necessarily just like bulldozing people because he can. Like the competition he's playing isn't obviously amazing, but you can tell that that's going to translate, in my opinion, to the next level. I like him. He's definitely one of my top sort of O-line guys that we've targeted. So thus far in this,
really well laterally too. You can see it with the slides.
Yeah, and I think Galani Miller would be a really good add, and he's definitely, again, coming next weekend. So there are more that are coming next weekend, but we wanted to highlight these four. But really, Justin, it's going to be all about who hits this week, right? That's the thing that everybody.
I'll throw this up here. Rajeev, did you see where he's at this weekend?
He was at Stanford this weekend. Okay. I'm going to confirm that, though, because I did not write that down specifically, but let me pull it up right now. He was actually nowhere this weekend. He was at Stanford a couple weeks ago. Nowhere. His first visit, at least in June, is Madison. So nice. That's good.
So I like that we get a chance to set the bar for summer recruiting with him, and that gives you an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you happy so far, Justin? I mean, obviously, again, it's early. We haven't really seen the guys pop yet, but we will. We are going to add a couple more. Are you feeling positive, I guess, is the better question about this OV month?
Yeah, I was talking to Nick Osen earlier, and I said I'm very anxious because there's guys that I feel very uncomfortable with the further away we get from the weekend with them taking other visits. Because there's certain guys, like I said earlier, that I just don't know where we are on their board. And feeling that way, you look at it and you're like, what does that mean? Did we make enough of impression that we're the leaders, or are we just kind of putting ourselves into the equation and now they're going to have a chance to go someplace else that maybe they had a better opinion of before they went and visited us? And you always worry that if that happens, that it's just going to be lights out if they have a good visit at someplace else. So it's just one of those things where it's like there's a couple of guys that I have really have my eye on that I'm like, I don't want to see that visit happen.
Well, we all know that's you're thinking about Petit.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard good things about him. Honestly, I think we might have been the front runner with him. So if he had an incredible visit here, there's a chance that he goes someplace else, and he's like, this doesn't compare.
I mean,
I can tell you. Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, just based on what we talked about with Nick earlier in the week, we know we're very squarely in the mix on Petit. We're squarely in the mix with Latimer, Washington, Sievers, there's a lot of guys that we're squarely in the mix. And I think the one piece of intel that we've always known about this staff, whether we're talking to anyone else, of the publications or whatever, is their ability to close. Their closing ability is good. So I think they did close a couple of those guys, and I hope that we can get that announced soon, because obviously we're going to need that. Like, especially when, remember, we talked 2 weeks ago, Justin, about the 2026 class and how it didn't need to hit a home run. It just needed to be that depth piece, especially at the 24 and 25 class. You can get stars out of that.
Yeah.
But if you get guys like Petit and Latimer in this class, those are bona fide stars. Those guys can be stars. I mean, there was a comment earlier, like, I mean, that Petit could be wide receiver 1, no problem, for his sophomore season easily. I mean, I feel like that's a really
I think he could
get.
play next year. I legitimately think that he's athletic enough. I don't think that you'd look at him and you're hoping for him to be highly productive next year, but I think you could get him on the field and say, hey, in certain situations, we like your frame and you're going to have a very limited route tree, but we know physically you're going to be able to just be a dominant athlete on the field compared to some people.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, if you rewind, we went through the film of the 2 guys who committed this weekend, Arthur Scott and Ben Wenzel, and we highlighted 4 players, Germaine Pulk, Jamian Theodore, Galani Miller, and Ryan Estrada visiting next weekend. And we'll hopefully be back again with Nick, maybe to break down some more of recruits and obviously anything that we, over the next couple of days, we will talk about it, of course, on our next show. Justin, final thoughts kind of after the first weekend of OVs, anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah, I think that the way I look at this is they had an incredible visit. I think that the staff did as good of a job as they could possibly do with this first weekend. We'll see how much of it carries over, but the weather was perfect. That sounds like the recruits had a great time. Like, we've definitely set the bar for everybody that came this weekend. The question will be just how did they feel about other schools at this point, and where were we in the pecking order before we came in?
Yeah,
I think we're going to feel really good about a lot of the guys that we wanted out of this weekend, but we'll see what happens.
Closing is what this staff does. Let's see who they closed, because they definitely closed a couple more, and we're hoping that either way, I mean, we're going to be happy with anyone that they close, but hopefully there's some of the guys that we have talked about. Obviously, go check out Locked On Badgers all week. You know, Ryan's going to be covering those. I think we'll certainly be on there as well from here and there as those guys hit. Go check that out. Also want to say a quick note about 247, who, you know, we talk a lot about Badger 247. That's certainly the site that we like the most. We're always promoting on here because of our good work with Nick Osen. Welcome John McNamara, by the way, officially to Badger 247. John McNamara is someone who, again, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know who he is. You follow my Badger Blitz. He's now part of 247. And you talk about Nick Osen and McNamara and Payne and Evan Flood still, like that's a very, very nice lineup right now of guys at 247, furthering the fact that that's a great site to go to. And we always want to big up to our guy, Nick Osen, one of our good friends who's comes on the show often. But adding John McNamara, really good ad for 247.
Oh, yeah. And Jay Kokorowski, too, who we talked to on the Discord a little bit. But I got to talk to Rajeev about it, but we're going to hopefully start getting him on here a little bit too.
Absolutely. The more the merrier. All right. Thanks for joining us as always. Sorry, it's a bit shorter today. I've got some plans this evening, so I'm trying to get done with the show. But also, we'll be back again next week, talk more about OVs and hopefully some big name recruits popping soon. Thanks for joining us. And as always, on Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.